Well, welcome to the MOOC live session for this course, Ecology and Society. I'll try to deliberate on the few themes which we have covered so far, and which we will also be covering in a few weeks' time. So meanwhile, you can also log in and post your questions if there is any, and I'll be happy to respond to those queries. So meanwhile, as I said, we will try to touch upon the few of the themes week-wise, which we have covered so far. We have engaged looking at the topic which is called revisiting the philosophy of deep ecology, which is also one of the environmental ethics, the philosophy which has been propagated by none other than the Norwegian philosopher Arne Nest. Nest in some way developed this particular term or concept to understand or a deeper understanding or deeper questioning about the idea of how we locate the environmental crisis. Or in other words, we can say that deep ecology in some way provides an alternative way of trying to resolve the ecological crisis which we have been confronting. Now, in order to make sense of deep ecology, what Arne Nest has also done is come up with another concept called shallow ecology, which is antithetical to the idea of deep ecology. Now, deep ecology, in some sense, as I said, is a kind of a philosophy which is very much related with the idea of ecology, and most often time, ecosophy is a term which is being used widely by Arne Nest. So Arne Nest in some ways also, would prefer to use the term for ecosophy over eco-philosophy. Now, deep ecology seems to be much more biocentric, and shallow ecology, on the other hand, is pretty much deeply oriented towards the idea of anthropocentric, where it places human outside the trends of the universe, or it tries to situate human as the centered of above all things. So therefore, it engages with understanding about the instrumental or the use value of nature. Contrary to this, deep ecology does not separate humans with nature or anything else from the natural environment. So therefore, it tries to look into the notions of interconnections or the interrelationship which are being shared by both the living and the non-living beings, and even the sentient beings. So therefore, in doing so, deep ecology tries to recognize the intrinsic value of all living beings and views human being as such one particular strand in the web of social life. So I've also highlighted in my lecture that when Arne Nest was being asked to explain his philosophy of what we understood as deep ecology, so in simple words, he sort of tries to address when he says that simple means reaching ends, sort of tries to provide or sums up the whole idea of deep ecology. So what Nest tries to claims is the essence of deep ecology, that is to engage in asking deeper questions, that is questioning the value of our society and also to the development of our totality. So therefore, he discusses the importance of the norms of ecological equality and self-realizations. So therefore, Arnides was of the opinion that science and technology alone cannot solve our environmental problems. Therefore, it is the very essence of deep ecology in that sense is to engage in further questioning. That is, it is only by asking deeper questions of today's industrialized or the growth-oriented, greedy materialistic society that we will be able to engage in a paradigm shift. So therefore, one should not simply limit ourselves to find a simple Cartesian solutions to environmental problem, for instance, pollution. So therefore, deep ecology is very much concerned with the psychological or spiritual dimensions of human's relationship to nature. So when Arnides was elaborating on this very concept of human self-realizations, or in other words, the ecological self, it tries to directly addresses the key issues of the eco-psychology. So therefore, one could see that deep ecological movement, which Arnides himself has published way back in 1986, perhaps is one of the best sort of contemporary statement of the deep ecology positions. So Ness has points out that deep ecology movement is pretty much characterized by the idea of deep questioning process and also by activism, which is very much spiritual engagement. So when the Ness meant, what does he mean by spiritual activism? It would mean that acting from the basis of a fundamental philosophical or religious philosophy or a total view, and then therefore his explanation lies within the domain of when he gave a distinctions between shallow and deep ecology. Because as I pointed out, shallow ecology is very much anthropocentric in nature and tends to view human as above or outside nature, which is perceived to be the source of all value, and which also ascribe only instrumental or use value to nature. So on the other hand, deep ecology, as I have already mentioned, does not necessarily separate humans from the natural environment, or does it separate anything else from? So having said so, deep ecology in some way recognizes the intrinsic value of all living beings and views human as just one unit or entity in the web of social life. So, however, the idea which is being posited by Arnides goes without any critic. So there are some people, most importantly from the third world countries, were very much suspicious about what deep ecology tries to propagate by assuming that it could be possibly a new variant of Western dominations and new colonialism, and they feel that people of the third world will be in some way again pushed out of their homes to make more room for spectaculars, animals. So there are also people who are of the opinion that deep ecology, in some sense, seems to be, favoring the rich nations that can afford the luxury of this was wilderness as habitat for the wild species. Now I move on to another, theme which we have discusses that very, approaches called social ecology, which is propounded by none other than the philosopher Murray Bookchin, who is also, an American anarchist and a libertarian socialist. So this very term, social ecology, was pretty much elaborated in the works of Murray Bookchin in his book, Ecology and the Revolutionary Thought. So what social ecology claims that the environmental crisis is perhaps the result of the hierarchical organizations of power and authoritarian mentality within structures of society. So what Bookchin tries to address is that the problem is not out there, but the problem is very much embedded, which are very much embedded within the social structures. So therefore, the solution does not lie elsewhere, but the solution is very much embedded, that is within the human society. Now, Bookchin, in his book, in some he highlighted that the dominations of nature by man, to a large extent, stems from the very real dominations of human by human. So therefore, he attempts to give a kind of solutions or an alternative that is the social ecology in some way, and which is the idea that one should, replace our mentality of domination with an ethics of complementarity. So such an ethics eventually, would reflect a true role of which is to create a much more fuller and richer world for all things. And this ethics of complementarity as a spiritual dimension that is sometimes described by many of the social ecologists as the respiratizations of the natural world, but is clearly not a call for some forms of atheistic theology. So one could say that the alternative, which is to a large extent propagated by Bookchin, is that would a society which could be based on ecological principles and an organic unity and diversity that is free of hierarchy and based on the mutual respect for the interrelationship of all aspects of human life. So therefore, the way human beings deal with each other as social beings is very much crucial in trying to address the ecological crisis. Therefore, if we can change the human society, then our relationship with the rest of nature will become automatically transformed. That is, therefore, to separate the ecological problems from the social would be, in some sense, a mistake or to misconstrue the sources of the growing environmental crisis. So I'm not going into the details, for instance, the key principles of social ecology as such, as I'm sure that you all must be familiar by now. Now, interestingly, what Bookchin has also says is that humans are seen as part of the evolutionary processes, and he also propagated the notions of decentralization and environmental changes which are produced by human, and also he discusses at length about the origins of the social dominations, where the idea of this dominating nature stems from the human society, where it also, tries to follow these principles of grow or die, which tries to put forward the principles of the capitalist society. So the other theme which we have, and then possibly would be engaging, is the notions of indigenous knowledge, which is also called as traditional ecological knowledge. Now, indigenous knowledge, to a large extent, talks about the knowledge or wisdom of the people, those who must be regarded as indigenous. So knowledge, in some sense, if you look at the works of many of the anthropologists, it tries to envisage the idea that knowledge is being inseparable and embodied in their affinities with land. So therefore, indigenous knowledge is very much oriented in a particular socio-cultural setting in a given time by a community or society. So I've looked into some of the works, particularly the works of Sinitoi, when I give an explanations of the definitions of indigenous knowledge, and we have also look into the definitions which are given by Silent and Smitherson, and some of the works, particularly of the anthropologists like Levi-Strauss, has also been deliberated upon of the different knowledge systems which has been in existence. Because Levi-Strauss, being a structuralist, has coined a very term called bricolage, that is, which means that to do it yourself, in some sense, tries to look into the way in which how the scientific on the one hand and the mythical thought on the other hand should be perceived and understood as valid, and then one does not really supersede the other. So therefore, this hierarchy of this knowledge system, of categorizing knowledge system, according to Levi-Strauss, hardly is valid or does not really make sense. Rather, it sort of tries to propagate the idea that they are two different autonomous ways of thinking, rather than two stages in an evolution of thought. So therefore, he often cited examples that magic is not necessarily primitive science. So one could say that indigenous knowledge system is very much embedded in society, culture, and then modern science to those who practice it. Because to many of them, science possibly could just be a small segment or part of knowledge. Therefore, treating indigenous knowledge as science would possibly diminish its breadth and depth. So therefore, science and indigenous knowledge intersect in certain subject areas such as technology, resource management, ecology, and the classifications of living organisms. So we all know that by engaging upon this particular way of understanding what that is, it is knowledge. It is something which is been passed on by informed experience and practical demonstration. More often shown that because these knowledge systems are very much hands-on, and it is based on trial and error, and very much practical forms of knowledge system. So we have also looked into the anthropologist team involved in dwelling perspective, where he tries to situate human beings in an active engagement with the constituents of his or her surroundings. So therefore, concerns, particularly the hunter-gatherer and the pastoralist communities, people who are today being defined as the indigenous people, and therefore he makes an attempt to understand their life roles and the knowledge system which are being communicated orally by specific examples which is being transmitted orally. So therefore, it is also very much vulnerable to rapid change. So with regards to its relationship with development, I touch upon looking at what LIFE project is all about, and then how indigenous peoples and development could be situated in local East Coast. So in the last theme which we are possibly looking at is to engage on the debates on shifting cultivations, and we comes up with a question that is it a forms of sustainable natural resource management. So I give an overview of how shifting cultivations has been practiced in Northeast India, because even till today, shifting cultivation is one of the major forms of agricultural practices, and which is also very much integral to the socio-cultural and religious belief systems of the people who are practicing it. So I look upon the meanings and methods which are pertaining to shifting cultivations, and also we have engaged upon some of the literature from the colonialists and then some of the ecologists and economists who are having their own justifications, that is the anti-June discourses. The colonial perception toward June again is important, and particularly because the forest policies which we are still following today are in some sense continuing the colonial legacy. So therefore, it's good to it is important and vital to see the notions of how the colonialist viewpoint about zooming or shifting cultivation. So we have also deliberated upon some of the points that is the advantage and disadvantage of zooming in the context of environmental sustainability, because many scholars have deliberated upon, including Ramakrishna, who is a noted ecologist, that made an extensive study, particularly in Northeast region, and argued that the diversity of species in this cropping system, in some sense, ensures the conservation of the precious minerals in the soils, and then therefore it can perhaps, in its traditional form, shifting cultivations can contribute to environmental sustainability. So we have also looked into some of the government policies against zone cultivations, and how different schools of thought, including the policy makers and planners, have looked into or rather perceive shifting cultivations as such. So I sum it up to you to some way, critically, look upon as to whether, based on those studies and literature, whether shifting cultivations can still be perhaps be practices or continue to be in these situations which we are into, when there's a lot of blame game upon the shifting cultivators. So I leave it to your wisdom to have your own opinion in that regard. So I will end up this summarizations of this whatever we have covered so far here. And I sincerely request you all to uh, submit or engage with the task of the weekly assignment. And of course, wish you all the best for the final exams. Thank you.